Hello guys, welcome back to Elephants in the Room. This is crazy. This episode is actually coming out on the first day of 2025, so the start of a new year. So I figured it would be a shame if I didn't do an episode about going into the new year and also just really kind of reflecting on this past year with you guys. And when I sat down to really reflect and think, I kind of had a hard time because I feel like time, it's so interesting because when you're living in it, time goes by really fast. But when you look back or when you're in it, time feels really slow. It feels like it's moving really slow. But then when you look back, you look at everything that's happened in your life in the year, and it's pretty crazy. And I think, I've obviously talked about this before, but things never go as planned. And I think it's safe to say that for most of us, things didn't go as planned this year. And I think about every year and how going into the new year, I set all of these expectations and resolutions and things that I want to do and changes that I want to make. And at the end of the following year, I realized that most of the things I tried to change didn't happen and didn't stick, and a lot of different things happened and a lot of different things switched. And so I think that's a going theme in my life, is just learning that nothing goes according to plan, but sometimes that's actually a good thing. So I want to reflect on this year with you guys and just talk about some of the hard things that I learned and some of the things that maybe caught me off guard, and just talk a little bit about kind of what I went through this year and how I feel like it changed me. So I guess I'll just start by sharing a little bit about what the start of this year looked like. So you guys know last year, my boyfriend's career blew up, and we spent a ton of time traveling, and it was the craziest, busiest year ever. And when we got back from all of that, I realized how physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally depleted I was, because even though so much was growing in his life and in my life, there was so much that was also dying and so much that was being neglected. And I think it's really easy to not prioritize the little things, but in time, those things do catch up to you. And so I think when we got back from all of that, I realized how depleted I was and how much needed to change. And I feel like this year has been a year of rest and a year of redirection and a year of, honestly, a lot of numbness and a lot of just things that have really made me question who I am, what matters to me, what I believe in. And I think this year has definitely been the hardest year on my relationship with God. I feel like my relationship with Him has shifted so much in good ways and in bad ways. And yeah, I just feel like it's felt in a lot of ways that I've backpedaled in this year. Yet at the same time, I've taken so many forward steps in my life. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I feel like this year has been a lot of stagnancy, but also growth at the same time. So let's talk more about it, because I don't want to go into every detail of everything that happened this year. But I want to talk about some of the things that I learned in 2024. So one of the things I learned, and I know I've said this before, but money does not buy happiness. And coming from someone who grew up without money, I always thought that money bought happiness, and I always thought that success satisfied you, and it doesn't. This year, I've gotten to have the most financially comfortable year of my life. I never thought that I'd be in a position that I'd have a beautiful home and a nice car and nice things and not have to work 60 hours a week and have freedom and all these things. Like, I have had so many prayers that I prayed answered this year. And the crazy part about all those prayers being answered is that I feel like through a lot of those prayers being answered in my life, God has shown me that none of those things that we strive for, and none of those things that we pray for, and none of those things that we think are going to fulfill us actually fulfill us, which is crazy when you think about it. Because I look back on 2 years ago when I was working at the shoe store, working 60 hours a week, trying to balance being in a long distance relationship, trying to balance starting the podcast and pouring and doing that. And I asked God, please, God, help me to not stress financially. Please, God, help me to not have to work this job that I don't like. Please, God, help me to be able to do what I love full time. Please, God, help me to live in the same state as my partner. Please, God, help me do all these things and have all these things. And it felt like if I just have those things, I'll be happy and I'll have peace and everything will be good. And when I got all of those things, I started doing the podcast full time and got my dream sponsorship from Olipop. And I was able to move to LA and live in the same state as my boyfriend. And then he had all of this success, which then provided us a ton of financial blessing and security. And all of these things, I got the puppy of my dreams. I have more free time and more flexibility to do what I love. And yet, I feel that I've struggled this year just as much as I have in the previous years, emotionally and mentally and physically. It's like you think that when you have these things that you desire so deeply, and you think when you have this time that you'll use it appropriately and that you'll use it to do all these good things. And that, well, if I just had this time, if I just had this money, if I just had this job that I love, everything will be great. And it's just not true. And it's hard because I've had a hard time knowing how I can really convey this to you guys, because I think it is very interesting that God has put me in such a unique position where I've obviously lived such an extremely opposite life of what I'm living now. I grew up on food stamps. My parents had no money. We were not stable. My parents were addicts. And I have lived the opposite of my life. And now I'm in this very unique position where I've had so much financial blessing and so much favor on my life. And I used to look at people in my position and I would just think, if I could just be them, I would be happy. And if I could just be them, I would be healthy and everything would be good. And it's just not that way. Everything in this life comes with a cost. Every job, every good thing you pray for, every good thing you desire, everything you strive for comes with a cost. There is challenges within anything in this life. And so, not to say that I don't acknowledge how absolutely incredible and amazing it is to have all of these things in my life. I do. But it's just so interesting to me that you can have everything in the world that you've ever wanted, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be happy. And that has really, in a lot of ways, inspired me, and in a lot of ways has discouraged me. Because I think, in general, most of us are constantly yearning for the next thing. We're working towards the next thing. And it's not to say that it's not good to work hard. It's not to say that it's not good to desire things, to want things. But generally, like, we're always looking forward at something that gives us this hope and gives us this passion and drive to do something. And oftentimes we're not super present where we're at, and we're not super grateful where we're at. We're always looking at the next thing. And I didn't really realize how much of how I operated actually had to do with my deep desire for these things: security, stability, success. It's like you don't realize how much you operate out of a place for those things until you have those things, and then you're able to look at your life and be like, oh wait, so like, how do I operate now? And this is messy and confusing to explain, but what I'm trying to say is that this season has really tested my faith and has tested just my overall view on life. Because, like I said, when you do have some of those things, and again, it's not to say I have all these things. Obviously, a lot of the things that I have are just a byproduct of my partner having those things and then that pouring onto me. It's not like I'm super successful and that, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. But it makes you really question things, because when you're not having to like constantly desire and think about having these things that you want, it just changes your perspective on everything. It's very interesting. But what's really cool about, I feel like, what God has done in my life is that He has shown me that without Him, none of those things matter. And without Him, none of those things actually fulfill you. None of those things actually bring you joy. And I've not only seen this in my own life, but in my partner's life and in people who work around him and just this whole industry. I've seen time and time again that like these things don't fulfill you. They don't bring you joy. They don't take away all your problems. Like, we are all putting so much time and energy into trying to get to this place, and it almost feels like, it's crazy. It feels like a scam, because then when you get there and you receive some of that, you realize, oh wait, this actually doesn't fulfill me. This actually doesn't take away all my problems. This actually doesn't do all these things. And so what's crazy about that is that then it shifts your perspective, and you're like, oh, well, what am I doing things for? Why am I doing things? And what actually matters to me? I don't know if that makes any sense. That is one of the things I've learned, is that truly money doesn't buy happiness. And the way that that's also affected my relationship with God is that I've always gone to God out of a place of need in my life. When I look at my relationship with Jesus, when I first became Christian, I was always needing something from Him. I needed help financially. I needed help emotionally. I needed or was hoping for a healing in a certain relationship. Like, I was always going to God desiring something. Oh, help my podcast do well. Help me be successful in what I'm doing with social media. Help me do this. I was always looking to God for something. And then when I got a lot of things that I wanted and I didn't need God anymore, because I was always coming at Him from a place of need. So when I stopped needing security, stability, safety, comfort, when I had kind of all these distractions and all these earthly desires that we all want, which aren't necessarily bad things, but can be, it made me really easy to turn my back on God, because I didn't need Him. And when I started to not need Him, what was scary about that is I started to see how my relationship started to fall apart with Him, because I wasn't putting in the effort to spend time with Him, to connect with Him, which made me realize that a lot of my efforts and times in going to God and spending time with God was to gain something from him and to ask him for something, which obviously God loves us and he wants us to come to him with every desire that we have and everything that we want. But it made me think, wow, do I love God just for who he is, for who Jesus is? Do I love him and just want to spend time with him because I love him? And again, it's not to say that I don't love Jesus and that I've never loved him or gone to him from a pure place, but it made me realize, how many times am I just going to God to be in his presence and to learn about who God is, to read his word, not to try to find an answer or to try to find a solution or find a way to comfort me. When am I just going to God to go to God because I love him and because I want to know about him, I want to learn about him, I want to feel his presence? And obviously God is a good God, and so the things of God are going to feel good. But like, I had to look at it and be like, when am I really just going to God because I'm like, I love you, God, and I just want to spend time with you to learn about you, not about me or my needs or my comfort. And that really started to deteriorate my relationship with God because I stopped really needing him. And that slowly made me more numb, less present with him. And over time, that really started to affect what I feel like my connection with God has always been, my connection with Jesus. It is this pure relationship and this relationship where I love him. And so it really put a test on my devotion to him. And that has been really hard this year because I've really struggled in my faith. Like, I believe in God. Of course, I love Jesus, but I've struggled to feel connected to him all by my own doing. And that is something that I have started to shift and started to work through and started to spend time with God. And he has shown up for me and, comforted me and given me, different little signs or things that make me feel his presence. And it's because he's a good God. But this year, I definitely learned the importance of loving Jesus because you love him, because you believe that he is the God of the universe, and that you really want not just what he has to offer for you, but you want his heart. And you also want to be obedient to him and his word because you love him and you trust him and you want him to use you. And so that is something that I went through this year that really changed my relationship with God and has been really crazy because when I received a lot of these things that I prayed for and a lot of these things that I wanted, and I wasn't content and I wasn't happy and I was still struggling, it's almost like God was like, okay, I gave you everything you asked for. Now what? And then it was me being like, oh, wow, it actually doesn't take away all my problems. It actually doesn't take away any of my anxiety or my sadness or whatever. And it actually can actually distract me from you. And it's also like he gave me all these things and it was like, now what? What are you going to do with all I gave you? And so I think that has been very challenging this year, but also very cool because I've learned a lot and I feel like my relationship with God is transitioning and shifting for the better. And that's just truly an honest take. It's kind of scary to say because I have to understand that people are going to read into this and think whatever they want, and I have to allow the space for that. But I think that's part of what I want this episode to be, is that I want to share not only my failures with you guys, but also what I've learned through them and ways that I've actually really struggled this year. Because it's just honestly places I've struggled. And, I said this too, but another thing is just like your joy doesn't come from your circumstances. Trust me, guys, I have had really, really bad circumstances, really, really good circumstances, and some in between. And your joy does not come from that. Your joy comes from your relationship with Jesus, your relationship with yourself, and also the daily things that you're doing, your daily habits, your daily routine. Like all these little things contribute so much to your mood, to your joy, and the little things matter. Like going to the gym, eating healthy, spending time reading a Bible, spending time going to therapy, working on yourself, healing from your trauma. All these little habits, serving people, keeping your house clean, like all these little things that we do that that help keep us physically, spiritually, and mentally healthy, they actually contribute so much to your joy. And I didn't know this, but I read it's some influencer, this health influencer that I really like, but she was posting about how habit and discipline and following through on habit actually develops such a sense of self-trust and such a healthy sense of like dopamine release, because when you follow through on the things that you tell yourself you're going to follow through on, and when you be the person that you want to be and you follow through on acting out of a place of your morality and the things you believe in rather than your desires and your flesh and the things that make you feel good, it helps you have a sense of self-trust and self-love, because you are sticking to what you believe in, what you want, who you are, what's best for you, even when you don't feel like it. So that actually is such a huge part of where your joy and I feel like your identity and self-esteem come from. And that's a really simple thing. And that leads into, I feel like, the next thing that I've learned, which is that structure actually creates freedom. I think I spent so much of my life thinking that when I finally had free time and when I finally didn't have such a tight schedule and such tight expectations and such, all these things, I thought that, freedom just is going to create so much peace and joy, and I'm just going to do all the right things with my freedom. Like I thought that when I had more freedom that I would be super successful at this podcast and that I would be the fittest and healthiest I've ever been spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And let me just tell you, in this year of freedom that I've had, not to say that I haven't still had a lot of responsibilities and things to do, I am not the best physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally I've been. I'm not. In a lot of those ways, I am weaker physically than I was. I am spiritually weaker than I was. I am not as successful or consistent at this podcast as I would hope to be. Like, there's so many things that I could be doing better. And all of that to say, structure creates freedom. And it's not to say that I think it needs to be so strict, but I think that when you can prioritize your mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, and do the things daily that matter the most, not to say you need to do a million things, not to say it needs to be all or nothing, you're not going to be perfect, but when you can prioritize those things and make sure that you're doing those things, it's actually going to create so much freedom to do things outside of those things. It's like, it's hard to explain, but it's like when you structure your day and when you structure your life, it actually creates freedom and peace. And I never thought that before, but I see that now, that routine is important, that consistency is important, and sometimes it can feel like it's not fun to do, but it actually leads to so much more joy and peace, because having time is actually not good a lot of the times. Having too much free time isn't good. Too much free time leads to laziness, leads to giving into selfish desires, fleshly desires all the time. And all of those things don't actually make us feel good long term. Like scrolling on your phone does not make you feel good. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your life. Not eating good, not exercising, neglecting yourself spiritually or physically or mentally, like any of those things that might initially feel good, sleeping in and not going to church on Sunday, or opting out of reading your Bible or doing your journal work because you rather just watch a movie. Like all those things, they're small, and I'm not saying that we need to obsess over them and focus on them too much, but consistently not doing those things is actually hurting you. And doing the hard things in the moment that may take discipline and may take sacrifice are actually bringing you more long-term joy and peace when you do them. So, I feel like for many years, but specifically this year, I've realized just how much my phone and being addicted to my phone has taken from my life. Like, I don't even want to know the amount of hours that I've spent on my phone this year. It makes me sick. Like, it literally makes me sick to think about. And going into 2025, I'm definitely going to be doing that differently, because I am not going to give my time to something that not only doesn't serve me or my life, but pulls me away from the things and the people and the purpose that matters in my life. Like, I want to spend my time so differently. I want to talk about some of the ways that I feel like I've changed as a person this year, which, guys, I'm about to be 26, which means my frontal lobe is pretty much developed. So this is about as good as it's going to get. No, I'm just kidding. I will still learn and grow, but I do feel like a lot of things have shifted in my brain, and it's kind of hard to explain, but I think I've never felt more just leveled, like not as many highs or lows. I feel a lot more stable in a sense. And but I feel like some of the ways I've changed this year, I feel like I've definitely started to love and accept myself physically more than I ever have in the past. And I think that's part of just getting older, is starting to just like appreciate your beauty internally and externally, rather than constantly trying to like enhance it and or change it. So I feel like that is something that's changed for me. And honestly, it's really weird, and I've talked about this before, but I feel like I'm in such a new discovery phase of myself. And I don't feel like I really know who I am. I feel like I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning. There's so much in my life that I haven't experienced. And I think because of the way that I grew up and because of the lack of exploration that I was able to have, I think I'm like still figuring out like what I like to do and what actually brings me joy and what actually gives me purpose. And I think I'm really kind of in this self-discovery phase and really just re-contemplating my life and who I want to be and what I want to do. And I feel like what's really shifted is like, I used to want to be and want to do a million different things, and I feel like I was so influenced by other people in the way that they were. But I feel like for the first time in a long time, I'm really like eager to just do what is me. Like, I feel this deep desire to get rid of the things that don't serve me, that don't align with my morals, with my values, that don't bring me joy, that don't bring me peace, that don't push me closer to Jesus, that don't push me closer to being a better person. And I just want out with those things. Like, I feel this deep desire to simplify my life and to focus on what really matters to me and what I really love and the things that really matter, and get rid of the rest. But on the same end, leave this space of exploration for myself. So I have some cool things that I want to do and changes I want to make in my life. And instead of feeling like I need to be tied down to one thing, I'm starting to see that I don't. So I'm kind of in this weird exploration phase, I feel like. But it's also cool. I feel like it's not a bad thing. It's just different. And I'm embracing that, I guess. I definitely have started up my therapy journey again. I took a little time off in 2023 because I had a transition between therapists. And now I've been very much diving back into it. And I mean, I know I've said this and I'll say it again. Like, therapy is a game changer. It is one of the best parts of my life and one of the things that has made me who I am. Like, I crave it. I desire it. I love it. It is so important. And I think everyone should do it because no one realizes how much what they've been through affects them. And not only affects them, but affects the way that they operate in life. And so I just am committed to continuing to heal from all my childhood trauma, my relationship trauma from my divorce, and I just want to be the healthiest version of myself because I want to be a good mother, a good wife, and I really, really want to break that chain of generational trauma in my life because I do not want to be what was before me, and I want change and redemption. And so I am just eager to continue to do that because it doesn't just stop. I feel like I used to think like once I do X amount of therapy or once I do here, like I can stop and I've done everything I need to do. And I just feel like it's a continual thing that is it's just like working out. I feel like it's something that helps you keep yourself mentally and emotionally well. So I love therapy, guys. That's my hot take on therapy. And I know a lot of people don't think therapy is important, but I really do. And so, yeah, the ways I've changed, I guess I'm still figuring it out. I feel very different. That's what I will say. Very, very different. And now I want to talk about, going into a new year. And I want to be realistic with you guys because I know there's going to be 20 billion podcasts that come out about New Year's resolutions and how to tackle your New Year's resolutions and how to become the best version of yourself in 2025 and all that stuff. And even though I think that stuff is awesome and it's motivating, a lot of it doesn't stick. And then we get discouraged when we don't stick to what we set our minds to. And I guess we're on this journey together because I don't really know exactly how to do it. But I think my motto of the year is realistic discipline. Because I think that the best thing that we can do is set realistic goals, standards, and desires for ourselves. Because when we do them, we then will feel motivated to do more. But I think when we set all these expectations and all these things, it can just be too much. And then we end up being disappointed, and then we end up giving up, and then we end up being hard on ourselves. And so I guess I would say that something that's shifting in me for this year in my resolutions rather than the years prior is that I want to look more at my heart and more at the posture of my heart rather than the outcome, I guess you could say. So rather than being like, I want to grow 20,000 followers on Instagram this year on my business page or whatever, I would say, I want to dedicate more intentional time to this podcast and spend more time intentionally planning episodes and really, really, really trying to bring value and doing it out of a place of pure love and purpose for my audience, right? So it's like, I think getting to the root of anything is so powerful. And so instead of setting these goals of, I'm going to do these new 10 healthy habits and I'm going to check off this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, I really want to look at my heart posture and try to correct my intention and my desire. And so I want to really tackle that in my spiritual life and my walk with God and really, really learn to be intentional with God and also disciplined And also, same thing with this podcast. Like, I really feel like I've kind of just been flying by the seat of my pants the last couple months. And I really want to be more intentional with this podcast and do something that not only, brings me passion and excitement, but also do something that I just want to be more intentional. Intentionality, like that's a huge thing. And same thing in my relationship with David, my relationship with my family. Like, I want to really just focus on my heart posture towards all those things and the kind of person I want to be, not all the things I want to check off and all the ways I want to succeed and all the ways I want to look and all. No, I want to go back to like the root of why I do all the things that I do and really like analyze them and decide what actually matters and what I actually want to do. That's what I feel like I'm doing this year differently than last year and the years prior, is I really want to reshift the way that I see resolutions and or the new year, and kind of cleanse and get rid of what doesn't matter. And so with that being said, I want to just encourage you guys that like plans fall through and you will fail, but that's everyone. Like, don't be so hard on yourself this new year. Don't overcomplicate it. Simplify it. Choose things that really matter to you. And don't compare yourself to other people when you are trying to set New Year's resolutions and or change old habits or create new ones. And with that being said, I want to talk about some things that I feel like I am going to do differently in 2025. And just some things I feel like I want to leave in 2024. And one of those things being phone addiction. I know we've talked about this. I did an episode about this, but guys, like when I really look at the last year of my life and I look at the amount of time that I've spent mindlessly scrolling on apps, it makes me sick. I hate it. I hate that I've wasted time, and I hate the way that it makes me feel. It makes me compare myself to others. It takes me out of my present current situation. It makes me ungrateful for the things I have because I compare. And it also makes me desire to be anyone and everything other than me. It's so easy to have so much information and so many other people that you're looking at and trying to be everyone. There's just so much overconsumption on social media. And so I really want to strip it back this year, really spend time with just me and with God, trying to figure out who I want to be, what I want to do, and how I want to tackle my career and my relationships. And even though I think social media can be a cool thing and you can learn on it, I also think I just want to be able to start having thoughts for myself, not so inspired by everything you see online. So this year, what I'm going to start doing, what I've already started, but that I'm going to really, really, really try to stick to, is social media timers on my phone. So I don't know exactly how long I'm going to do for each app, but right now I have 1 hour on TikTok a day and then 1 hour on Instagram, partly because obviously for the podcast I have to be on there to post and stuff. But I really, really want to minimize my time on social media and create boundaries and guidelines just for myself. And I may even do a cleanse. I'm not sure. But that is something I really want to change about 2025 for me, and something I'm leaving in 2024. The next thing that I really want to change in 2024 is consistency. I think I've always been such a black and white thinker and an all or nothing thinker that I go full throttle into something, and then when I don't do it, I just give up on it. But slow and steady wins the race. So I am going to try to tackle my goals, my dreams, my physical goals, mental goals, spiritual goals, emotional goals in realistic and slow timing. Like chipping away at it every day and doing it every day. And even if I miss a day, doing it the next day. And so I think overall, I just want to stop the teeter-totter of doing it, not doing it, doing it, not doing it, because I struggle with that with a lot of habits in my life. So I'm going to try to just stay slow and steady consistently. So that's another thing that I am going to do in 2025. And I think something I want to really do differently this year is try to stop caring about what other people think about me. And, I've said this before, and I used to care a lot about what other people think of me, and I definitely don't as much as I used to. But I specifically mean this in regards to family, friends, and people in your life. I feel like this year I've had a lot of things come to the surface from like family, of certain opinions of me. And sometimes I forget like what I do, like this podcast, and very openly talking about my old religion and my divorce and all these things. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people have very specific judgments of me. And it hurts a lot more coming from someone who knows you than a stranger. And so I think that I've let a lot of what family or friends or people in my life think of me affect me and get me down. And what I want to prioritize this year is just my relationship with God and what He thinks of me and what He thinks of what I'm doing. And if that's in check, that's all that matters to me. And other people's opinions of me have nothing to do with me. And I have to allow a space for other people to do that. So that is something I really want to change about, or I want to go into 2025 with. And I think the last thing and just the biggest thing is like just intentionality. I think being really more intentional with my time, more intentional with my choices, more intentional with what I prioritize, what I do in my day-to-day, what I say yes to, what I say no to, more intentional with my friends, more intentional in my relationships, and really take the time and stop giving in to laziness and any just fleshly desire. Like I really want to work hard to shift and do things out of a place of love and intentionality, even when they're hard to do. And that's just what I feel like I really want to focus on this year. But yeah, so I love you guys, and I hope that you guys are excited for this new year. And I just pray that God opens doors for you guys. He heals things for you. He redeems things for you. He grows you. And yeah, I'm excited for this new year. I definitely am going to be doing things a little bit differently on the podcast, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. But yeah, I love you guys. Thank you guys for coming along on this journey with me and reflecting on this year with me. And yeah, I just hope you guys know that you're loved and that this life is messy and confusing. And I'm in it with you, and I'm here with you in it. So yeah. I'll close out this episode by asking, what elephants are in your room? My name is Nicole, and I will talk to you guys next week.